Hello and welcome back to the Red Path. We are doing another episode of Massacre the Mission today. So let's dive into a intro video which probably has the volume too loud for you, and then we will tear down the icons. Alright, so welcome back. We are doing the second episode of this series where we look at each of the missions available in Grand Tournament Arcs of Omens and study them and look at how we can play them as World Eaters players, as a combat army, or just for general tips overall for anyone playing this game, especially competitively. These tips can be used, of course, in any game. It's just looking at how to maximize the mission for your scoring, maybe some guidance on secondaries to pick, areas of the board to try and dominate, and any tips and tricks I can think of as we're doing it. So first of all, let's begin by looking at the mission itself. So, tear down their icons. It is a hold 1, hold 2, or hold more to score your primary. The mission tertiary is planting bombs. This is something which apparently no one does. I do it fairly frequently, normally 1 or 2, try and get 3 if I can. But Dara clowns on me all the time as someone who does this. It is an action that is completed at the end of your turn by OBSEC units and at the end of your following command phase by non-OBSEC. You can also attempt to defuse them on a 4-up, that is your opponent's ones, and all the bombs have to be planted in your opponent's territory, which is the opposing half of the map. Split down the centre is one of the angled hammer and anvil type deployments. And you gain a CP in both command phases as typical. So that is the basics of the mission itself. So, just like the previous mission, very similar at least, as I said, it's hold 1, hold 2, hold more. As you have 2 objectives in your relative ease to obtain, 1 in your deployment zone and 1 very close, 1 in the centre and then symmetrical on the other side, you're going to very easily be able to hold 2 for the majority of the game by playing fairly defensively for a 32 victory point profit. Then if you plant 3 of the bombs in the game, you'll gain an additional 12 because these are each worth 4 victory points, which would get you 44 victory points on the primary, very close. And then, if you have 1 turn of holding more than your opponent, you'll max out the 45. So you can score fairly well on the mission primary. As a path to scoring high, again with 44 on the primary, 10 for having your army painted, and then looking at 30 for your secondary scoring, you're going to get 84, which is a pretty solid score. And as this is obviously a World Eaters focused channel, this is with World Eaters secondaries in mind. And to no surprise of anyone, the secondaries I would recommend are, first of all, Pile the Skulls for your auto 15. This one bears no explanation at this point. You're going to score 15 in almost every situation. I actually had a game recently where I didn't, but I didn't actually need to in the last round of the game, so I just bought an extra buff just for the hell of it. The second one I would recommend, okay, this one is actually going to be quite controversial. I would only pick this as a default if your opponent gives nothing away, if you don't feel that you'll be able to kill enough stuff for, say, no prisoners, or bring it down, or what have you. But raise the banners. This is just a 10 on this mission. You may be able to sneak out a cheeky 12 with some pre-game moves against a slower army, or an army that doesn't want to come to the centre or the parts of the board that you'll be occupying quickly. But with pre-game moves, we can very easily be on 3 of these turn 1. If you go first, you raise a banner on the centre, for example, and force your opponent to come out and play. But I would pick this, depending on opponent and terrain and all the other variables, based on scoring 10 victory points for it. That's all I'd want, because I'm getting my 15 from pile, 10 from that. And the third one I would, as a default, again, this is opponent dependent, blah, 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 blah. would be the Blood Gods do. The 5 objective missions aren't typically the best for this one, just because you're going to be concentrating force in smaller areas of the board rather than spreading out, so you may not score as high. But I feel that even on this, it's fairly safe to score 10 because it is locked to the objective. Both opponents can lose on their objectives, so you can throw away a unit then kill a unit on the same objective in the opponent's turn, so you can score quite well, and it is based on where a unit is at the start of the turn. So moving off an objective and then getting killed will still score you for an objective that was otherwise safe. So this would be my default position on this mission. Raise the Banners would probably be the first one I would swap out, and Blood Gods do I would swap out after that. But you know, you just got to kind of see where you're at in the game. So let's move on. Here is the map with a setup of terrain. Yeah, you can see what's going on here. Should be able to see my mouse on the screen. So we have the 2 large L's in the center blocking line of sight and kind of protecting the flanks. We've got some dents here, just creating a bit of protection for the sight lines, because there's a nice long shooting lane down the center here. Then the smaller L's are just kind of like breaking up lines of sight everywhere and giving you a bit of protection in your deployment zone. So the first thing I want to look at before we go into deployment is actually looking at the map itself. So what I really want to do is look at the map in a more advanced way, try and incorporate this in future videos as well, of course, as I learn more and as people comment and we chat about it, and kind of figure out some more things. So the first thing I want to look at with this map is, whilst everything is technically symmetrical, we do have what I would consider a stronger flank or a more advantageous half of the field. So let's throw that up. So it's highlighted in blue. This is assuming we are starting on the left-hand side, right? So the reason I feel this is stronger is for 2 key reasons. The red arrow here is obviously pointing towards the enemy's deployment zone, but this is the enemy's territory over here on the right hand side. Everything right of this dotted line down the center is the enemy's territory. That is where we can plant bombs. It is also giving us our strongest terrain piece, which is this kind of weirdly highlighted red L, large L here, in the center. And the reason for that is if we either want to hold more, or if we want to be able to hold 2 and continually stop our opponent from perhaps holding 2 and therefore holding more in a way, we have this great staging element here. And what I mean by that is, look, we've got some more red arrows. We're totally professional now. So the way I would envision playing this is probably having a good chunk of my army deployed over here behind this L above the 15 over here on the left hand side, and being able to bring them out to stage behind this large L here, because from here we can assault the center and the opponent's objective over here. And if we look at it, this green triangle right here is really the only part of the battlefield we actually have to worry about. We've got 3 objectives, and if we are either controlling or threatening 3 objectives for the entirety of the game, we're probably winning the game. So this one piece of terrain here offers strong positioning. It's a very strong piece because it offers us line of sight blocking and obscuring from the opponent's side of the table, and is, as a large piece, really gives us the real estate to position what we want. If we look at this part of the table as a skirmish, as a very small engagement in the greater battle, we can actually just thrust our entire army, barring a couple of units, into this area and really maximize how we're going to choose our engagements and just overwhelm the opponent. So let me get rid of these. We'll keep the green up here, and we will go into how I would consider deploying. So on this mission, I would definitely have some stuff in reserves. I'd definitely put a small squad of berserkers in reserves, and I'd probably put a small squad of jackals in reserve. I may consider putting regular 8-bound in if I was running 3 squads, but not at the moment. So what I would do, and I will try and do this approximately in the order I would deploy. because what I want to do is I want my opponent to spread their forces along their battlefield. I want them to really try and assume that I'm coming across the top and across the bottom and through the center. So I may start, as typical, may put a spawn up something like this. I would then get a spawn in here somewhere, and if they had deep strikers, I'm going to put a spawn near the back to hold my home objective. Obviously everything would be positioned in a way to mitigate lines of sight and everything like that, but we're just doing things here for a rough overview. So following that, I would have a rhino, and the rhino would have one squad of jackals up here inside it. We would then put a squad of berserkers up here. So at this point, my opponent's thinking, oh, okay, he's going to come strong on the top here. So they would be meeting me over here and positioning, say, 30-40% of their forces up here on near their home objective. I would then, not avocado, my bad. I would then put a squad of 8-bound up there. So just to really cement that in, they're seeing all these units thrust down here, and they're really thinking I'm coming up there. I would then have a squad of 8-bound probably just inside this L. We would then put a squad of exalted 8-bound down here. You know, we're just countering something they've deployed over there. And I'd maybe stick a squad of exalted 8-bound back here as a further screening thing, or maybe if I wanted to do an action on my home objective for some reason, I don't know. We're sticking it there. They can raise the banners. There we go. I answered my own problem. We would then have another squad of berserkers up here, just to cement the belief. We'd put one back here. We would put, we'd actually have to have some in a rhino. So what we'd do is we'd put a rhino here, and there would be a squad of berserkers inside it. And finally, in this situation, avocado would come out something like this, just making sure both 8-bound units were in his aura to be pre-game moved. So looking at this deployment, if you are not a World Eaters player, you are assuming that the strength is going to come on the top flank. There's going to be a lot of aggression. That's far too big of a brush, but the aggression is going to come over here. That's what it looks like, because we've got berserkers, 8-bound, a rhino. Everything else seems more of a defensive posture. However, what I would actually do with our very professional tools here is, with my pre-game moves, I would pre-game move. My 8-bound may go to the middle, depending on if I've got first or second turn. Maybe I want to raise a banner over there. And this squad of 8-bound would come down to the center, somewhere like that. And avocado would leap over here. That would be my pre-game moves. What I would then do is, to completely throw off what my opponent had done, my pressure would actually come from the jackals would come out here to raise a banner. I'd probably throw the spawn, get him out here to get a blood god's dew point. The berserkers would both jump inside that rhino, so let's just chuck them down here. And this rhino would move down here. We're completely abandoning the top. The jackals are up there maybe to screen out. They're going to raise a banner and just get some primary points for a couple of turns. Whereas the majority of my force, when I actually move, is going to come out something like this. We're going to stick exalted 8-bound there. The regular 8-bound are going to move here. We're going to have the 2 rhinos. This one empty would actually probably come out to just be a second wave onto the center objective. And this 8-bound, maybe they come over for a charge, or maybe they come down here to stage as well. So suddenly, whatever my opponent has up in the top corner, up here, if I get the right thing, so my opponent's going to have their army sort of spread out like this. Don't ask me what that's meant to represent. So they're going to be locked into sending, say, 40% of their army over here, 40% over here, and then, you know, the remainder is going to come here, or perhaps it's going to come out to screen because they don't want my reserves coming in their deployment zone in turn 2. This creates a disparity in the engagement. My strength is completely down here. It looks like about 80% of my strength is on the bottom of the table versus only 40%. I should be winning those engagements. Everything that moves and then trades is going to, ignore that, everything that moves and trades is going to quite handily pick up what is thrown into it. And through the course of the game, I'll slowly be able to push over here. A rhino would come up here. Spawn probably dies. If not, he's coming over here. Then we have our other rhino. We're just going to keep... Whoa, that's not the way it's supposed to go. We're just going to keep pushing up and pushing out and just keeping the pressure on wherever we need to be. We would then, at some point in turns 2 and 3, we'd have a squad of berserkers come in, probably over here in turn 2, and they would plant a bomb. Probably the best place to plant your first bomb is right here, because bombs have to be planted 9 inches away from another one and wholly within 3 inches of the squad doing it. And we want to use berserkers because they're obsec and they can just throw it down. Then next turn they're 3 to come up. Then in turn 3 we'd hopefully have a squad of jackals come in over here and they would plant a bomb somewhere like that. Now if your opponent wants to kill the jackals, great. If not, they're going to be free to advance, and then in turn 5 they can plant another bomb over here, and there is 12 points for you sitting right there. And because the strength of our army is here, it is very unlikely your opponent is going to be able to come and actually defuse those bombs, and you're just scoring points. It's just free real estate at that point, and GG. Okay, so that is an overview of how I would approach tear down their icons. It's never going to be as simple as this. It's never going to be as easy as how it may appear on paper, how someone on the internet, on a YouTube channel is talking about it. But hopefully, if you can start to look at the missions and look at how terrain is set up, if your local scene always uses the same terrain setup, or if you use player placed, you'll be able to start seeing what part of the battlefield do I want to control. World Eaters being a relatively fast army where we have decent speed, but our acceleration stutters. We're very fast at the beginning, but we can run away too far and break up our cohesion by having our first wave too far ahead of our second wave. So there is a kind of momentum issue we do need to contain and control. We can't just go completely pedal to the metal. But what we can do is pick a small area of the battlefield and attempt to absolutely dominate it if the terrain allows us to. And in this, staged managed setup, which I've just created for purposes of this video, would allow us. But you will typically be able to find somewhere on the battlefield a piece of terrain or an area of the battlefield which will allow you to utilize the strengths of our kind of reasonable speed, especially with Avocado or a Juggernaut Lord giving us the +2 on our core units, or our Exalted 8-bound being natively 9, Demon Princes, what have you. Being able to use our speed there and the aggression we have, and just being able to ignore being shot by using true line of sight blocks, obscuring and even dense when necessary, utilizing transports like rhinos to just absorb wounds for us. There's lots of tricks we have to really maximize and capitalize on what our strengths are to bring these to bear. And by containing the engagement and shrinking the battlefield into something which is much more profitable for a ground-based melee army such as the World Eaters, we can swing the odds in our favor, I think, and actually start to score well. I know at the beginning I said Raise the Banners would probably be an auto pick, not an auto pick, but a default pick. I would probably still, even with this tactic, take banners, depending on the opponent. If they have lots of MSU, or there's something I can get a lot of kills with, obviously I'm going to be taking no prisoners, etc. But as a default, I would take banners, because I'm probably going to score 10 plus in this mission just by completely dominating the bottom half of the table. And I'm going to have a pretty decent primary score as well, should max it out or pretty damn close. And I'd be confident of winning if I was on this terrain setup, quite frankly. I would love to see this setup, and it'd be great to play on it. But okay, before I ramble on forever and just repeat myself, let's close this one off. If you've enjoyed this, please let us know. Consider subscribing. Hit the like button, I guess. Drop a comment. Tell me if I'm an idiot. Tell me if this was helpful. I know my first episode of this had some really positive comments, so thank you for that. And hopefully we'll just keep making this better and more helpful for you folks. Please come and join our Discord. Make sure to check us out on Spotify and Twitch and all the other things that, you know, our content's available on. But until next time, folks, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill main bird.